Hello? Hello? I had a power outage. I'm trying to get everything back going again. My apologies, chat. My apologies too, because we did have a bunch of donations, and I'm sorry that I didn't. Sorry that I didn't properly thank all of you guys for said donations. My apologies. Uh, excuse me. Sorry for yawning in your earball. All right. Hello again, Nico Pluto. Hey, Michael Grant. Good morning. Yeah, sorry for the interruption. Sorry for the interruption in content. So, I have a question though. I know some people are going to come back in. I do think we kind of got what we needed out of that content. I'm happy to keep going. So, let's do keep going with Rob versus Loner. Geopol or Rhino. Here shot says, damn, starting late, bro. I was just live 30 seconds ago. I got knocked out. Power-wise. So we just had like 50 people, 50 to 60 people hanging out, enjoying the Lonerbox versus Rob Noerr on whether or not Trump is a fascist. I feel like Lonerbox. Excuse me. I feel like Lonerbox hasn't. I think he would be better served by debating Cultured Thug or debating Keith Woods about political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism and learning how fascist, actual like ultranationalists and fascists view fascism. And then what I would say too is I feel like Rob has reprehensibly hidden the ball. You know, I feel like if you believed in political corporatism, number one, I'm a political corporatist. I think analogizing the nation state to a human body and then advocating for the political corporative health is actually an okay way to conceptualize politics that puts everyone within the nation state into like a similar box of working together for the total corporative good. You want your cardiovascular system to work with your endocrinological system. You want your muscles to work with your skeletal system. You want your brain to be able to properly organize and command the human body for ideal health. So I actually don't have a problem with political corporatism as a conception at all. What I do have a problem with is the flexible authoritarianism. And I think when you look at the history of how Mussolini and how Hitler seized power, you can see the flexible authoritarianism, which differentiates it from authoritarianism in general. Because, like I said, Iran is an authoritarian theocratic republic. So they're still authoritarian. If you stand against the government, they will torture you or kill you. But they're not flexibly authoritarian. They don't modify their authoritarian structure over time. It is fixed. So, and then the same thing, that's why I would say that a left-wing dictatorship like the CCP or North Korea, they share a lot with fascist regimes. But if they're fixed in their governance and they have specifically like socialist goals, then I would still differentiate them from a fascist regime. So, anyways, Nico Pluto says hello again. Michael Grant says good morning. Solid Snake says titty fish. 10 Train says yay. Here Shot says starting stream late. I was just live a second ago. I literally just had a power outage. So I had a power outage. Excuse me. And it knocked out the internet. And then Jen Winkler said that I should use my dating picture. There's my dating picture. So if you back out and you check out the thumb, it's me on a train to Miami, sluttily taking a selfie in the train bathroom. That is my That is my dating PFP. All right. Remember, everyone, new stream, so make sure that live chat is better than top chat. True. There is a goal set, and we are on live chat instead of top chat. They should trickle back in. It was pretty clearly unintended, for sure. Lonerbox, because watching you peek your mic is highly entertaining. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, 50% of people have already voted for Lonerbox and Rob Noerr, so instead of just bullshitting for the next 5 minutes, should I just click play? I think I'm just going to click play, just because the power outage interrupted my flow. Anyways, moving.
Yeah, did I not say that, or do you just not remember?
I don't remember the specific things you said, but it's
you do remember.
I remember many specific things you said. I can't recall if you said verbatim what you just said. I know that you hemmed and hawed, but I want you to be honest. What do you think the average reading of your post would have been to a person?
Well, by a MAGA person, they probably think I'm trying to incite violence against them.
Okay, what about a lefty that hates Trump?
A lefty that hates Trump? Mm-hmm.
They'd probably said, "Oh, Lonerbox is smart, dude."
They wouldn't watch my stream.
And he's like, someone tried to kill Trump. Maybe. What point should we have taken out Hitler? Now the fact that you want to hem and haw because you realize you look like an asshole, right? And be like, "Oh, no, that's not what I meant. What I actually was saying," you know what that post was. It was disheartening. It really was. And I think that it's damn right shameful that so many of you on the left continue to spread this bullshit and ignore the fact of the overwhelming violence that we see. Do you think it's a coincidence that one of the bullets that was going to be used to kill Charlie Kirk said, "Catch this, fascist"?
Yeah, that's why I think the word fascist also just kind of needs repairing on all sides. I even call out leftists when they overuse the term as well.
Donald Trump is a political corporatist. He advocates for the political corporative body. All of his rhetoric is rooted in the mentality of political corporatism. When he talks about vermin and he talks about, some Mexicans are good people, but most of them are like rapists and murderers and all this, the fucking Muslims are coming to like rape and kill and destroy society. And the communists are effectively an autoimmune disorder who are trying to invite in the third world hordes in order to destroy America. That's all language rooted in political corporatism. Once again, that's not my beef with fascism, but he's also a flexible authoritarian. If he could get away with defying the Supreme Court of the United States, he would. If he could utilize the immunity decision in order to make sure that he and his cronies never suffered a political consequence, he would. If he could be dictator for life, he would. He literally said that I wanted to be dictator on day one. Now, he said after that he would be chill. But yes, he wants to be dictator of America as long as he can. The reason why he can't is because of the constraints of power. But that has nothing to do with his internal philosophy. Internally, he is a political corporatist and a flexible authoritarian. Obviously. Gosh darn it.
So the only thing that
sorry, you've gone on these like enormous fucking. I just remembered like on the very beginning, I think maybe just after your opening statement, I wrote a note here about palingenetic nationalism and Mussolini, but we never even got there. So I was going to say that your definition of palingenetic nationalism, when you say Mussolini was talking about like basically destroying the nation to go back to, again, this is probably why you'd rather take an approach that looks into what people actually do rather than what they say. Mussolini's opinions and his actions changed with the wind. You were talking about corporatism and state seizure. Mussolini wasn't doing that for his entire period. One of the first things that he did when he was appointed by the king was to privatize a lot of industries and to open up free markets. He did.
Which is why you shouldn't use corporatism as government takes control of corporations or rule by corporations. You should be thinking about the nation state as a body.
That for a good 2 years. And then even corporatism, which I know there's a lot of these like very, very niche underground fascists who just focus on corporatism as if that's like the most important thing about them. Corporatism in practice was basically governed and dictated by big business. It didn't really make much of a difference to the way big business functioned until it was getting to the point when he wanted to invade Ethiopia. I don't know, maybe that could be a more interesting conversation. We can maybe talk about people who everyone agrees are fascist and see where we disagree on them and then see maybe where the overlaps are with them.
I just want the audience to know the reason that people use this term on the left, and that's the most important thing.
You're not talking to the left, you're talking to me.
Are people tired of the fucking left going, insurrection, fascist, this is our definition? Fuck this shit, right? You want to know why they're using these terms. That's what's going on. But I'm happy. I'm not running from the debate. I'm just saying we could go through all this specifically. How about this? One thing that we could agree on, if we could say that this is the quintessential fascist country, what would you say is the quintessential example?
the quintessential fascist country from probably Hitler and Mussolini.
Mussolini. Can we go with
Italy
that?
Italy and
Because there's
Germany.
some scholars that Hitler
There are no scholars who deny Hitler was a fascist.
that claim that he wasn't.
There are, overwhelming majority would say that Hitler
Well,
was...
I think you're right about the majority, but everyone would agree Mussolini, right?
So Paxton and Griffin both say Hitler was a fascist.
We both agree. By the way, Griffin says Trump's not a fascist. Okay.
Paxton does, yeah.
So here we go. Let's go through your notes. Why'd you put your notes up online?
Nothing to hide.
What's that?
Nothing to hide.
Well, thank you. Here's your notes on Mussolini, right? Let's start. Here's his initial programs. Now, each of these we're going to say, does this sound more like Trump or his opponents? Number one, expansionist aims around the Balkans and Mediterranean. Sound like Trump?
Do I think Trump wants to expand into the Balkans or the Mediterranean? No.
General expansionism. I'm not being an ass.
Yeah, you can just list it off. I know where you're going, so just list it off and I'll...
Well, I would like to go one by. I would say.
You want to go one by one?
I would say yes. That sounds Trumpian.
Yeah, you can just say that. Yeah.
Right? That sounds like Trump. Sure. I'm not going to lie.
What about military incursions into Mexico, in Canada, in Greenland? Once again, I don't think that we don't have Greenland in our back pocket because Trump doesn't actually want Greenland. It's because of the limits of power. Okay? I don't think that we don't have Canada because of Trump. If Canada, if we were literally, if there was the popular will to militarily or diplomatically seize Canada in Greenland, we would have Canada in Greenland. There just isn't the popular will, military casus belli, or diplomatic opportunity to have those people. But yes, Trump 100% would have expanded into Canada in Greenland. And then we absolutely would be having more aggressive military incursions into Mexico to deal with the cartel if Trump actually followed Trump's rhetoric. So weirdly enough, Rob, I think this is a bad point.
I'm not a bullshitter. All right, number two. You ready for the second thing Mussolini did? Women's suffrage. Now, does Trump... Every person I've met that's like repeal the 19th. By the way, show of hands, who repealed the 19th here? Now, leave your hand up if you're a Trump supporter. Wow, that's weird. That doesn't sound very Trumpian, women voting.
Do you think most Trump voters don't want women to vote?
I think that of the people that don't want women to vote, overwhelmingly it's Trump supporters.
Well, if you looked at my
I don't
notes,
think Trump's...
again, if you looked at my notes, you'd probably also, it's not even far off from where you're reading, I think, somewhere in your notes where it's a very common trend of fascists where they do actually where they change their opinions and where they also will very frequently just betray their purists. Mussolini did that more than anyone.
Right. So it's if Trump wants women to vote fascist, if he doesn't want women to vote fascist.
Well,
right,
neither of these play into whether or not he's a fascist.
The question is, we're looking specifically at the quintessential prototypical fascists and the actions they took to see if they match up with Trump. I think that all of us would agree here, yourself included. Don't you think that the Democrat message is Trump, he's trying to restrict the vote? If we're talking about the populist metric that we're looking at with Mussolini here, the theme that you're getting across here is that he wanted to expand the vote to everyone because part of populism is representing the people and saying they need to have a voice, et cetera, et cetera. Trump said to be restricting the vote. So how can you square that circle if this is what true populism looks like? The Democrats are the party that want to remove restrictions on voting.
Again, neither...
Larry Hutchinson, long time no see, King. Good to see you again, and thank you for the 5 gifted, brother. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Hope the family's doing well.
Of our definitions talk about restrictions on voting as being one of the pillars of fascism.
The problem is our definitions use terms like paleogenetic and ultranationalist and authoritarianism. So we're like, what are examples of things that would be that? And you're like, oh, well.
Hold on, I like this comment too. First T News says, Connor, stop using your yard work Tinder profiles as thumbnails. You are making failed males like North and Destiny and Darius cry. Yeah, I did have some slutty post-gym shirtless t-shirts, but considering I'm a 38-year-old father, I did think posting shirtless workout photos was too slutty. And so all my workout photos on my dating profile are shirted. I feel like that's very responsible.
Mussolini did all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, so let's look at what Mussolini did to make him authoritarian. So we look, it's like, he allowed women to vote. And I'm like, oh, okay, that would be an example of authoritarian. And he'll just run and say, no, he could have done that or not done that, but he is an authoritarian. Well, what's your proof he's an authoritarian? Well, the things he did. But we just went through the things we did and see that that's not like Trump. Yeah, but you could either do X or the opposite of X, and that makes you an you see the circular logic here?
Well, the question is more about what they wanted. We know, again, if you look at my notes, Mussolini compromised a lot with the current establishment that he was in because he just wasn't as popular as someone like Hitler was.
I think that it is reasonable.
He had to be appointed by the king. He had to respect the fact that the traditions around him as well and the society around him. Again, we both know, and I don't even know why you pretend to disagree with this. Mussolini, when he got his way, didn't have to prove himself in front of an electorate.
Okay, but when he got his way, was he doing things like, next, 8-hour workday and worker participation in the technical management of industry? Does Trump sound like a guy that's like, we need to limit the workday to 8 hours? Or does he sound like a guy's like, fuck it, business, work them to death. We don't give a shit. Which one? Now, this is once Mussolini's in power, so he doesn't have to worry about the electorate. Was he doing things like pushing an 8-hour workday?
It matters which phase of power he's in as well.
Okay, let's say phase, what do you want to go with, 7?
Well, I was asking you, I'm asking you because it's your claim, like which period?
It's your notes. When you wrote that, what period were you talking about?
So when we're talking about Mussolini and his expansion of the 8-hour or his economic policy, Mussolini's economic policy changed all the way throughout his rule. Again, there's somewhere in those notes as well. There's somewhere in those notes as well. As far as what fascists say and what they do and what they stick to, economics is probably like the main sphere where they change all the fucking time. Like, because again, economics and the ideal economic structure of society.
This is where corporatism, once again, you have to know what corporatism we're talking about. So if I type in corporatism definition, corporatism is a political and economic system that organizes society into distinct groups such as labor unions, business associations, and agricultural guilds to negotiate policy and manage the economy. It is distinct from modern commercial business rule, though the terms are often confused. Origin of the word derived from the Latin corpus body, viewing society as a living organism where different parts work together for the common health, not big business rule. It does not mean rule by modern commercial corporations, which is properly called corporatocracy, but rather functional group representation. Alternative path, originally designed as a middle ground to avoid the class warfare of Marxism and the intense competition of free market capitalism. So this is, and state corporatism, an authoritarian model where the government tightly controls professional groups and labor unions, forcing them to serve state goals, seen historically in 20th century fascist regimes. So this is once again is where fucking people are mixing up like liberal neo-corporatism, a democratic system based on voluntary tri-party cooperation between the government, labor unions, and business leaders to set national economic policy. This is oftentimes what people are referring to when they use the term corporatism, but state corporatism is what we're fucking talking about. Conceptualizing, once again, I'll pull up my little picture. I love my little picture. And I'm going to DM Lonerbox too. To be fair, you guys might have seen me publicly back away from collaborations with a lot of people in the lib sphere, but it's just because I wanted to give them the opportunity to avoid the Destiny drama, which, truth be told, has only really calmed down in the past, like, month. So, I wasn't actively looking for collaborations with Pisco, Ryan Mulally, I think I might have already said Hutch already, but Hutch, and Lonerbox. It's not because I don't like the guys. It's not because I don't want to talk to them. It's not because I'm not interested in debates or conversations. It's literally just because I knew that it was so hot that I didn't want people fucking negatively interrupting our conversations or shit talking in chat during our little fucking collabs. But I'm going to DM Loner and just say, hey man, I watched your Lonerbox versus Rob Noerr fascism debate, and I think I have some insight to offer. You want to yap sometime? I think it'd be fun. Now, Larry Hutchinson for 5. Thank you, King. Much love. Been gone dealing with life and working on myself. Back in the gym, working on my face, seeking better employment, so life is chaotic. Lol. Well, hey, man, that's the grind. Bud123 and Jeb Kush and me and a shitload of people in chat we're all in the same boat, King. We're all in the same boat. Unfortunately, sorry, I just want to commiserate with Larry Hutchinson real quick. Unfortunately, I thought my life was on train tracks. I loved my wife. I thought that we were going to be together until we died. I thought I was going to be, married, especially until the kids were out of the house, And then I just thought, working out, going to the gym, fucking hanging out with the wife, hanging out with the kids, and working this job until I died. That was it. You know, I literally thought that was my train tracks until I died. And then life threw a curveball into my dick and balls. And I had to like reset my self-definition, who I am, what I want, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And the truth is I still want pretty much the same things. But I'm not going to be doing it with the person that I thought I was going to be doing it with. So starting from that position, you know, you have to do like a whole reinvention of the way that your life works, looks like. So if you are a young to middle-aged man who thought that your life was going to be a certain way, and then life threw a curveball into your dick and balls, and then you had to recreate what you thought your life was like, you are not alone, brother. You are not alone.
It's not really something that fascists seem to give that much of a shit about. It seems to be that they'll do what works. They're pragmatic. That's why economic policy is not really like a part of a key definition of fascism that you would get from Paxton or
But the economic policy would go with the idea of ultranationalism, which you need to win. And ultranationalists mean it's the nation above all.
don't necessarily...
So they wouldn't look at private business and say, well, we don't really care about you. They'd say, no, you as an individual or you as a private businessman have to work for the good of the state. That's why they put these massive regulations. It's not just that...
Right. But sometimes the good of the state is going to be benefited from deregulation. I don't know. Good example being slave labor in Nazi Germany. I don't know about you, but I don't think there's much more, you know, deregulated than slave labor. Okay? I don't think the Nazis were routinely checking in on the welfare of their Jewish and gypsy slaves. So this is a misunderstanding from Rob.
You're like, well, my definition doesn't talk about economics. Yeah, it does, when it's talking about ultranationalism. That's what it's referencing. Last thing, I promise.
Well, to be fair, Paxton does not say that you need to have a particular economic policy to be a fascist. Just
I'm
so
talking about ultranationalism, which he does say you need. Last thing.
But he doesn't, but he, again, do you think he contradicted himself? I'm sorry?
Do I think that Paxton contradicts himself? No, I think that Paxton's outlining his version of what, we'll get to what he means by ultranationalism, and I'm saying things like economic policy.
But you disagree.
Do you think that Paxton would say that Mussolini's economic policies were leaning into ultranationalism?
I don't know what you mean by leaning into ultranationalism.
Were they ultranationalistic policies?
It depends on which ones. His economic policies changed constantly.
The massive regulation of industry.
The regulation of industry when he was preparing for war?
Sure, and even outside the scope of it before that.
It's not... So when he was massively regulating industry, especially when it came to war, because he was nationalizing, this is when he kind of moved a little bit away from the corporatist side. That was when he was planning to invade Ethiopia. So
just to be clear, when you said...
The policy itself is not inherently the ultranationalist part. The ultranationalist part is why he's doing it. He was doing it so that he could invade another country and expand his territory.
No. That's not...
It's the expansionism. Like no. There's a reason no one thinks about economic policy when they think about fascism.
That's outrageous.
And there's the same thing with the definitions
That's
as well.
outrageous, right? Because now what you're trying to do is shoehorn in, ultranationalism is only a subset of the real problem, which is expansionism.
The expansionism is
Can you be an
ultranationalist
ultranationalist without expansionism?
You completely misunderstood what I said.
Can you be an ultranationalist without expansionism?
Absolutely, you can be an ultranationalist without expansion. Now, they correlate, but ultranational, like Bhutan is arguably ultranationalist because they have zero immigration. In the nation state of Bhutan exists solely for the Bhutanese people. And they only let in like a dozen tourists per year. They are truly one of the most like isolated countries on the fucking planet. But yes, nationalism, people, ultra people. Yes, you can defend your people while being isolationist in an extreme degree. 100%.
It's possible, but you'd probably need to.
When you write, quote from your notes, both Birth of Fascism in 1919 coined the term fascismo, applied to the movement fascistae, man, I'm a redneck, combattimento, yeah? Roughly meaning fraternities of combat. And then you put immediately after that, so you're like, in 1919, here's how it started. Then you put initial programs called for. Initial, not after he was in power and then decided to move up the war machine. So last one. Here's what you write. Partial expropriation of all kinds of wealth through progressive tax, seizure of church properties, and confiscation of 85% of war profits. Trump ever suggested progressive tax? Which party does that?
I don't know how long you spend in this debate looking at different economic policies and saying, oh, well, it doesn't look like Trump would have done that, so how could he possibly be I've never said, and neither does Paxton say, that there's a particular economic policy that you need to have to be a fascist. That's just
when
not
I'm
true.
saying, you're right.
That's just a lie.
In fact, you're right. If you want to appeal to Paxton, Paxton also says, even if you meet all of the criteria that Paxton talks about, that still doesn't necessarily make you a fascist.
I don't know where he says that.
You admitted,
I don't know where he says that.
You admitted, you're like, well, I'm just kind of applying and using it in my own way, Paxton. Now he goes back to Paxton when all of a sudden the authority matters.
I'm not applying it and using it. I'm not saying I'm using it just in my, I'm not changing the essence of what he's saying.
Look, this is what people want to do that use this whole like words are fluid and we could do whatever. They'll be like, oh, I have this author, I have this definition. Why wouldn't we go to the people that were fascist and say, well, what was the shit they were doing? If that's the shit we don't like and we're like, that guy's a fascist, we'd say, okay, what did he do? And when half of the things that your own words say that he did were more in line with the Democratic Party than Trump, I think it's reasonable to say, like, geez, it seems like you're only selectively applying this shit.
Well, when we look at, selectively applying, you're just using Mussolini, but Mussolini did a lot of those things that Hitler didn't do. So you're saying Hitler wasn't a fascist?
I'm saying that it's a clear case with Mussolini. And if we see
it's a clear case with Hitler as well. I don't know why you keep saying there's some ambiguity. There's not ambiguity with Paxton. There's not ambiguity with Griffin, is your definition.
Well, because...
Where's the ambiguity that Hitler was a fascist?
Well, because the idea of palygenetic, right? What was the palygenetic impulse of Hitler?
No, what you're doing is you're doing this thing that I've seen other people do this as well, is where they insist that fascism, basically, because Mussolini was the one who used that term and coined it and called himself a fascist, Hitler called himself a National Socialist, and therefore we just have to look at Mussolini's program. We have to look at the doctrine of fascism, which he had ghostwritten for him in 1932, which again is quite vague given the circumstances. But again, there is a reason, and people and fascist parties who exist today, there are some in America who try to do this, where they say, we're just adhering to the true fascism, which is Mussolini's doctrine from 1932, and they actually don't like Trump for that reason. But they don't. There's a reason you guys don't. There's a reason you guys don't know who the fuck those people are, and Mussolini would have laughed in their faces as well. They don't understand how fascism worked. Mussolini used to very frequently say that he himself was the definition of fascism, and his followers understood that. They understood that fascism, when it came to policy or when it came to what kind of direction they wanted to go into, it always had to involve raising some kind of like popular mass energy. And Mussolini adapted all the way throughout, and as did other fascists like Hitler, they adapted as well. That's why Hitler, when he was running, he ping-ponged back and forth constantly between his attitudes on big business. Most people, again, Marxists are like idiots for this as well, because they'll say that fascists are just like the vanguard of capitalists. But capitalists, some of them liked Hitler, a lot of them, most of them tolerated him, but he was at odds with them as well. And this is why you like going to.
And the reason why a substantial amount of free market capitalists hated Hitler was because Nazi Germany was still a market system, but it was a crony market system. In order to do well, you had to be in good with the party. That's arguably why China is currently state capitalist, because they have a market-based system, and I don't think they have the decommodification of basic human needs. I could check on that real quick. Does China have the decommodification of basic human needs? No, China does not have the complete decommodification of basic human needs. Instead, it operates a socialist market economy where housing, healthcare, education, and food largely remain market commodities tied to personal income in the household registration hukou system. Housing and real estate. Private property ownership and commercial rental markets drive the housing sector, requiring substantial personal financial investment rather than free state allocation. Healthcare costs. While basic medical insurance coverage is widespread, out-of-pocket expenses for serious illnesses and advanced treatment still place a heavy financial burden on families. Education expenses. Compulsory basic schooling is state-supported, but secondary higher education and extracurricular tutoring involve significant family costs. The Dibao system. China operates the Dibao program, a national minimum livelihood guarantee that provides cash assistance to impoverished households falling below local income thresholds. Weirdly enough, that's not decommodification, but it could be argued to be like a socialized program. Targeted guarantees. Rural poverty alleviation campaigns use 3 guarantees to ensure safe housing, compulsory education, and basic medical care for vulnerable groups, though these are safety floors rather than total decommodification. Public subsidies. The government heavily regulates and subsidizes key utilities, public transportation and infrastructure to keep living costs manageable for average citizens. So yeah, weirdly enough, even China, the last existing quote-unquote socialist nation state, is still state capitalist. So they're not free market capitalist. They have a market, but it's strongly controlled by the state at their leisure.
To any economic policy to say whether or not this is the true fascism?
Oh, and sorry, the point that I'm trying to make is that fascist regimes operated very similarly.
It doesn't make any sense. In Mussolini's Doctrine of Fascism, he says in the first paragraph, fascism exists as a movement responding to and in space and time. So obviously, economic policies, or like which tax policy makes the most sense in a particular area, is not going to define what would be a fascist 100 years later. It's
almost like they're advocating for the political corporate of health through flexible authoritarianism. Weird.
It's like saying, I can be a liberal today because I think that there should be universal suffrage, but only for men. No, ideologies adapt and they change over time. We're talking about what's the essential qualities.
How convenient. And so once more, we could see the X or the opposite of X, depending on if we want to call someone a fascist, would apply, because we could read their intent and know that their words, et cetera, et cetera. So they're always a fascist no matter what they do. And the proof is they're a fascist because of the things they do. When you say...
No. Trump is arguably a fascist because he's a political corporatism is 100% rooted in almost all of his rhetoric, and he's a flexible authoritarian who doesn't give a shit about the Republic of the United States. That's why.
Well, you're just saying that Mussolini, it's only the things that meet, and, just because Trump doesn't do all that. What I'm telling you is there are things that Mussolini did that were in part of the important parts of his ultranationalism that are literally antithetical to Trumpism. Literally, progressive tax rate, women's suffrage, taking church property. These things are the opposite. These are things you'd be more akin to see his opponents doing. So it's not just a matter of, it's A, B, C, and D, and well, Trump did A, B, and D. It's Trump did A, but the opposite of B, and the opposite of C. And he's like, yeah, but that's okay because it's for the time and place, right? How do you define ultranationalism?
No, it's that. Well,
which is
just to be clear,
here.
it's not A, B, and C. So you gave it away yourself. You said part of his ultranationalism, which means obviously there are some ultranationalists in different situations and in different times of history and with different nations with different histories and values that would do slightly different things. So
define it.
Ultranational, again, I put national rebirth, but I guess it's kind of similar to the...
so Trump wants a national rebirth?
When people talk about the idea that the nation is constant...
Yes! Make America great again! America was great in the 50s and 60s when Trump was arguably born and coming of age. It is no longer great because all the blacks and the browns and the communists and the Jews are ruining everything for everybody. Realistically, more the Muslims than the Jews in reference to Trump's case, since Trump is a Zionist. But all of these ethno-religious minorities and all of these political dissidents have ruined America. And so as a result, we need to make America great again through a rededication to the true nation, the true Americans, the Northern Europeans and honorary whites and Asians who believe in the American Republican Representative Democratic Mixed Economy Capitalist Project. And so as a result, we are segregating out the political corporative vermin and viruses and cancers and tumors and AIDS who pose a existential, spiritual, economic, and social risk to the United States. And we're going to make America great again by politically dispossessing these groups and by politically enshrining the true Americans, the Northern Europeans and the honorary whites. And by the way, I don't even think that Trump necessarily thinks that way, but it subconsciously, he 100% does. Like when he's like, I love the Mexicans. Come check out the taco bowls at Trump Tower. Clearly, he doesn't hate every single Mexican, but he does hate the swarthy, unwashed masses flooding the border and raping and murdering everyone, right? But he likes his local Mexicans, the ones who work for fucking $4 an hour in his hotels and all that bullshit. Anyways, yes, Trump is an ultranationalist. Yes, he's a political corporatist. Yes, he's a flexible authoritarian.
constantly undermined, humiliated, under attack from enemies both within and without, and there needs to be some kind of strong man who's going to come in and take that nation and give it the rebirth either from within and from against the rest of the world.
If this doesn't describe the MAGA movement, then I would start screaming at this point. I would start spurging and freaking the fuck out and yelling.
Usually where and that's like a very front and center of their ideology. That particular kind of nationalism is what goes into fascism.
You said particularly, like, maybe I'm putting a word in your mouth, see if you agree with this. It's like they'll use the idea that we've been like embarrassed on the national stage, right? Like things like that.
It's more of like an obsessive callback to national humiliation. National decline.
All right.
So, well, first of all, just to be clear, just maybe we can agree on people who everyone agrees were fascists. For Hitler, he didn't win an election on anti-Semitism. He won an election on Versailles and anti-communism. So the communists, that was part of his nationalism. They were part of nationalism for most fascists, is that they thought that the nation was under threat from these foreign subversives like the Russian-backed communists, and also that the Treaty of Versailles and the international community was embarrassing us and taking a piece out of us, and we're going to fight back. Mussolini, it was with the mutilated victory. They thought they didn't get what they deserved.
So let me ask you a question. Let's pretend that all these fine.
Rob, any concession that Donald Trump mirrors that rhetoric identically?
People go and get like some beer or something. It's me and you smoking a cigarette. I'm an asthmatic, so I'd be like, you know, and I say, hey man, are you kind of embarrassed for Trump on the world stage? He's kind of humiliating the country, isn't he? What do you think?
What would I say that's true about Trump?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascist. You want to return to a time before Trump, right? And you think there's calls to how he's humiliating us, both inside the country and outside.
Yeah.
That sounds very fascist, man. Again, I don't know.
This is probably the 5th time where you've taken one pillar. But
how does that not mean? Are you populist?
You've taken. Am I no, I'm not populist.
Okay,
no.
what? So you don't believe in like the idea that we need to like massively support the electorate and the individual voices? The parties you vote for.
That's not populism. That's just believing in democracy.
Define populism.
Populism is a fundamental idea that there is the people, which is the authentic expression of whatever population that they're in, and there is the establishment, the impure, the corrupt, the people who are.
So what party do you vote for in Scotland?
Labour.
They populist?
No.
They don't believe that there are the people and then there are corrupt vanguards?
Not when they talk about the authentic expression of the people and that there's a corrupt establishment that they're fighting. No, Labour doesn't talk about that.
I was about to say, I feel like that might be Cope from Lonerbox. I think lefties very often appeal to the oppression of the popular and vulgar masses and the need to emancipate them from the kleptocratic oligarchic elite. So, unfortunately, while I don't think that Lonerbox himself is a populist in that he explicitly tries to appeal to the vulgar masses through his rhetoric and personality for political power, I do think that the left wing is infinitely more comfortable with populism, at least until the past decade. The left wing in America was specifically more comfortable with populism than the right wing. The right wing was quite elitist. The right wing Republican Party was known as like the country club, middle class fucking party. Severin, good to see you too. Blacks and browns and the communists and the Jews. Laugh my ass off. That borderline identical to the Pink Floyd song In the Flesh. Kino scene, by the way, you should watch it. Sick.
No, they don't talk like that, do they?
Yes, they absolutely
don't.
do.
The corrupt establishment is
they talk
the Labour
all
Party
the time about money influencing politics and big money and all of these interests. And they talk about people like Nigel Farage or Rupert Lowe and how they're putting all of these special interests in that's subverting the will of the people. Yes, okay, that's how they talk.
I know that it's not, I'm trying to be polite when it's like a European talking to Americans. Americans don't know fucking anything about Europe. Like, no, Labour does not talk like that. Labour spends the entire time trying to convince everyone that they're pro-business because they specifically want to fight that idea that they're like...
No, wait, there's that idea. Where did that idea come from?
I don't know. What have Labour done when it comes to... Have they gone after the ultra-rich? Have they done like tax rises on... Have they raised income tax or corporation tax or anything like that? They haven't.
It depends. Populism basically comes from the idea.
They were going to do attacks on big farms, and then they walked it back.
I think my author's better than yours. Griffin says in the same book that populism's a term for forces, even if they're led by a small cadre or vanguards, in practice or in principle, and not merely for show, depend on people power as the basis of their legitimacy. Now, do you think that the modern left, whether it be the Democrats in the United States or Greens or Labor Party, if we see in United Kingdom, do you think that they talk about power to the people and the people having power? The fact that you want to argue that's like, nah, that's not the case. They're not talking about the will of the people, blah, blah, blah.
Well, just to stop you,
Nonsense.
I do believe the Greens and like Bernie Sanders, I do believe they're populist, but they're definitely, but they're not authoritarian and they're not ultranationalists. Would you say they are? But we're doing, it's sixth time now that you're taking one pillar and say, oh, that's
Yep. There you go. That to me is a stronger argument, is that labor is not ultranationalist or authoritarian. Any socialist, by the way, any Marxian socialist, they're not going to be ultranationalist. Like any Marxian socialist, the vision of Marx is a totally emancipated humanity. So like nations, dividing us up amongst these like ethno-religious tribes, and then solely administering people like co-linguists, co-religionists, and co-ethnics is like silly in the Marxian view. They're trying to emancipate all of humanity, not just one ethno-religious group. That's part of the reason why Hitler hated the communists so much, was because they ignored nationalism.
that sounds like fascist. No, it's three pillars.
Again, what we're talking about specifically is you've already demonstrated based on your rhetoric that you're ultra-nationalist, because you said you're humiliated by Trump and want to go back to a time before Trump. That's ultra-nationalist.
I don't think that
No, that's not. That's palingenesis. You've lost track of your own argumentation, Rob. Palingenesis is appealing to an older time that things were better and therefore wanting to revivify. So no. Palingenetic, paleogenesis. So no, you've mixed up your terms. No socialist is a fucking ultranationalist, bro. Skeptical says, seriously, when did Rob become such an F-slur? I gotta say, man, it's when he went after my wife. That's when it was. It was on Twitter. Rob and I were fighting about politics. I don't even remember what Rob and I were fighting about. It was very passionate. Oh, I think he was calling me a like stooge, grifter, liar without honor. And I said I would slap him in the face if he said that shit to me in person. Then he said that my wife was hitting on him because she was talking shit about him on Twitter. And then I called him the F-slur. I'm pretty sure since then, he's been a pretty big F-slur. So, whoops.
The next question is, are you populist? And you're like, no. I also have this unique definition of populist that's like some bullshit, you know. The truth is,
wait, what do you mean some bullshit? You said populism is just when people think that I think the people should be represented.
I read.
You just described populism.
Read a direct quote from the author that I get my definition of fascism from.
He said that populism is what? Just believing that the
term
masses
for political forces which, even if led by elite cadres or self-appointed vanguards, in practice or in principle, and not merely for show, depend on people power as the basis of their legitimacy. So it's...
Yeah, he kept attacking you over PV. Yeah, dude. And you know what? PV had bad people in it, right? Now they're like full-blown lefty freaks working with Hassan Piker, right? And Vosh is not the best dude on the planet. Actually, turns out Destiny is not the best dude on the planet either. But at least they were working towards a Kamala presidency. And at this point, if we had actually passed the border security bill in late, what was it? Was it 23 or 24? It was late 24, right? Summer of 24. If Trump hadn't nuked the border security bill and then Kamala had become president, I don't think there's a single person who can, in good faith, say that the Kamala presidency would have been worse. The only way the Kamala presidency could have been worse is if they had continued to let 10 million people into the country over the course of 4 years, putting extreme strain on our social welfare programs and social cohesion. That is the border security is exclusively, in my opinion, the only policy decision that you could argue that Kamala would have been worse on than Trump. The tariffs have been a fucking disaster. The Iran war is a disaster. The Epstein files is a fucking disaster. It has truly been like an amazingly shitty presidency. Holy baloney.
It says that they're depending on the will of the people and that we're here for your voice against the elites, etc. And that's where they get their legitimacy. This is why, for example, it jives with my definition, why Mussolini's like expanding the vote, right? Because his whole point is like, we want as many people. I'm here for you, all of your people. It's your voice that matters. More people should be able to vote, etc. Now, this is what every modern political movement does. They talk about needing to be the voice of the people and the power coming from the people because there's these elites. The left, he says the elites are like big money or they're, the Jews or, stuff like that, right? So both parties do this. Both sides do this. Again, populism is just a term. It's the same with authoritarianism. You've already acknowledged that your rhetoric's ultra-nationalist because you're talking about... Now, do you see this stupidity?
I have not said my rhetoric is ultra-nationalist.
Why?
Because you don't understand the definition of the word ultra-nationalist, Rob. There's no specific ethno-religious or tribalist group that Lonerbox advocates for. I almost guarantee you Lonerbox is a fucking globalist. He probably believes in the emancipation of global humanity. His political tribe is probably the entirety of the human species. And let's be real, if we start talking to him about sapient aliens, he's probably going to include sapient aliens in his tribalist group. So absolutely not is Lonerbox an ultra fucking nationalist. Oh, Bud123 says, so is Connor not door knocking with Hassan Piker? No, dude. No, I'm not. And you know what? Once again, I will say I am so happy that Mr. Mooten is now a grill hottest. He wants liberals and sane progressives to ally with never Trump and neoconservative Republicans and moderate MAGA, if they ever exist, and moderate Republicans, if they ever exist, in order to defeat both the far right and the far left. I'm so happy that Mr. Mooten, in his debate with Pisco, said that he would vote for a moderate Republican over a DSA person, particularly when it came to the House of Representatives and state governance.
Didn't you say that Trump's a national humility? Don't you want to reform to a time before Trump?
Because saying that is not the same as having it as like an obsessive first, like a frontal piece of your advocacy. Do you think me saying that, like, oh yeah, Trump kind of makes America look kind of stupid when he tells Syria to go and take charge of security in Lebanon? Yeah, that's kind of retarded. That's the same as like Hitler talking about the stab in the back, or Mussolini talking about the mutilated victory, or Trump the way he talks about MAGA. It's literally in this slogan, "Make America Great Again." We don't know exactly which time he's talking about. We have to guess.
I think that your rhetoric is clearly would fall in line with fascist rhetoric by your definition, and the party.
Well, even if you're pushing that, you're saying it would be ultra nationalist rhetoric, not fascist. But
listen. I think that, it would be ultra-nationalist. I think that, though, you would totally support the party in this country that puts that as their front and forward message. What are the Democrats running on in 2028? Orange man bad. Oh, he's humiliated. What'd your boy Destiny just say in the Dinesh? He led off with this. The rest of the world, our allies are ashamed and oh my goodness. So yes, it is a central pillar of the modern Democratic Party to say Trump is horrible. He's humiliated us in the country and out, and we need to go back to a time before Trump. That's ultranationalist by your definition.
No, it's genetic, you dumb fuck. Okay, guys. I could easily skate for the next hour on this content, but I think I'm tapping. Hold up. I'll do a poll. I'll do a poll because you know what? There's probably people who haven't seen this, so I guess I could keep suffering for your benefit. But I could use a Geopol palette cleanser, like Loner versus Rob, continue, Geopol palette cleanser. I need to get back in the debate scene. That's what needs to happen. That's fine. It's fine. I'll DM Prime. Literally, I'll DM Prime Kai right now. Prime. All right. I'll stop being a pussy. I'll do it right now. Hello. I need to get back into the debate scene. And I do not have firm commitments on Mondays. Please start sending me weekly invites. I want to start being a heel on your program again. God damn it. All right. There's a poll. If you guys just want to suffer for the fucking next hour, then we'll keep going with this. If you want a Geopol palette cleanser, let me know. I'll also DM Raging Tomato as well.
Again, I don't think so. I don't think that qualifies.
This is the seventh time, again, when you're talking about Democrat. You said that's ultra-nationalist, just for Democrats to say, again, Trump, they're saying what, like Trump has failed the country. But then you realize that when Democrats do that, they would also say Trump is disrespecting the institutions. He doesn't respect elections. And then they would start to go into things that are neither populist, are not populist, and they're not authoritarian.
Right. What Trump does is he says, here's reasons that we think that the country's been going the wrong direction. We don't think our allies have been paying their fair share. We think the elites in this country don't represent the will of the workers or the manufacturer. Same shit. It's just you're like, when our side does it, it's okay. They mean well, so it's okay. Ultranationalism, by the way, Paxton gets the idea from Moreau. Here's Moreau, what he says about it. He says, he propagated that nationalism is a substitute religion, culminating in a mystical cult of the earth and the dead that made absolute demands of the individual. Integral nationalism cast off all ethical ballast, obligating and totally subordinating the individual to one value alone, the nation. My country, right or wrong, you are nothing. Your people are everything. You are the kinds of moral commands to which integral nationalism binds to the faithful. In other words, it would be saying you are nothing. Your business is nothing. Your church is nothing. Your family is nothing. You are just a member of the state. Things that we would likely see if Trump did that would be demanding compulsory military service. Is that what Trump's done? Not even close. In fact, if anything, you could say, if we're talking about lip service, because if you can't just go with rhetoric and you have to go with the actual policies, Trump's such an evil fascist authoritarian, he can't even get the SAVE Act passed because his own damn party won't support legislation that 90% of us support.
That's not because of him individually, though. His power is limited by our republic, which I'm actually very happy to say out loud. Okay? I am fucking ecstatic. I am ecstatic that our republic is strong enough to tell Donald Trump to go fuck himself because we've allowed the, or I don't even know if the right term is allowed. I don't even really understand the filibuster. Okay? I understand, like I say, like, oh, I'm a politics guy. Why did we ever decide that, and correct me if I'm wrong, okay? This is my understanding of it. The filibuster is effectively open debate about any bill, right? And so what happens whenever there's a bill that doesn't have bipartisan consensus, the opposite side party says, if you bring this bill to the floor, because there's technically no limitation on the amount of debate that we can do about any given bill, we will just endlessly talk about this bill until eventually you withdraw it. So for the sake of getting your bill passed, you either need to compromise with us or you need to shelf your bill. And that's what's happening in the Senate right now, is I think all of the Republicans, except for two, have said that they would pass the SAVE Act, but then there's probably more people who wouldn't pass the SAVE Act, but they're just quiet about it. And then, even if Donald Trump and the whip and the Senate Majority Leader all bullied the shit out of the Republicans to do 51-49, the Democrats are still saying that this bill is so repulsive, we will debate it until you shelf it. And effectively, the Republicans have two options at that point. they either whip everybody into voting on a 51-49 basis and they change the rules of the Senate, which is not a straightforward process. I've looked at the way that they nuke the filibuster. It's actually a pain in the ass. You basically have to like initiate the vote, then initiate a vote on the rules change, then get like a non-super majority on the rules change, then vote for like a fucking simple majority on the rules change, then do the rules change, right? So it actually is like probably a multi-week, multi-month process to nuke the filibuster. And then once you nuke the filibuster for legislation, it's done. Meaning that any legislation going forward in the United States of America is a 51-49, right? So the Democrats get in, they pass fucking universal health care and abortion rights by 51-49. The Republicans get in, they get a federal ban on abortion, and they get the repeal of universal health care 51-49. And then you just whiplash the fucking Republic to death via 51-49 votes. Sorry. I love living in a republic where we can stick our finger in the eye of our fucking F-slur president. It's beautiful. I actually love the stagnation of our republic in this case.
So it has to be like, well, it's the way he talks. Okay, well, Trump talks about religion. Trump talks about family. Trump has never once suggested that you have to have some sort of compulsory service to the country. So this idea, again, this is where Paxton's getting the idea. Your author is getting the idea of ultranationalism. It is a religion. Can you show me any examples of Trump doing these sorts of things, like demanding compulsory service or saying that the nation comes before your God or comes before your family? Can you show me one time?
Again, this is going back to why, when I was using Paxton's definition, I said national rebirth. That's why I was talking about a form of political behavior, because this is actually from where he goes into the chapter on definitions. He said it's a form of political behavior entailing, obsession with community decline, humiliation, or victimhood, and then alongside cults of, to be remedied by cults of unity, energy, and purity. So I don't know why you. I don't know why you need to.
He's getting this idea of sort of ultranationalism, or what they talk here is about integral nationalism. It's the same sort of concept. And in fact, does Paxton calls Moreau like basically the first fascist, correct?
Yes.
Right. That's the idea. That's what ultranationalism is. That's what his author says, the original fascist. This is what he said.
But my author
the
also
form of
says,
nationalism that would require being a fascist.
Just to remind you, my author also says that you don't go to just like what the first person said to say that's what this thing is.
But it's clearly the quintessential.
He also says, again, maybe you should have just read the whole book, I guess. But like, yeah, when he goes to the near the end, when he's talking about the definition of especially with nationalisms, yeah, like the way that different people express nationalism are, yeah, of course they're different, because nations are different. They have different histories. They have different values. That's why when these neo-fascist movements run around wearing swastikas in America, they're actually not doing what, the fascists were not trying to be exotic with their language. They were trying to speak to the emotions and to the history of the people in their country.
Again, pretty much every modern political movement does this. The give back the land.
I don't think anyone does it to the point that one of their supporters, like Dinesh, is literally saying that, like, oh yeah, sometimes he lies, but it triggers the right emotion that I like it. And that actually is a theme that comes up constantly throughout Paxton's book, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini did as well. It was about triggering the emotion, regardless of whether or not what you were saying was true or not. And then that's why Trump has convinced you, when it came to that thing with China, that there was some truth in him saying that different countries were going to make their own ballots and send them to the United States to cast them. Your response was, well, maybe we'll find out that that's true later. We may find out that's
true. Well, the point is,
that's it working on you, Rob. That's a lie from 6.5 years ago, just fooling you.
No, here's what happens.
The evidence they had was that someone downloaded voter information that was public.
So let's go through this for a second, right? He said, all they did, it was like one guy did this. These were the same people that were running around with their hair on fucking fire because Russians spent $500,000 on Facebook and Pokemon Go ads. Holy shit. And we had to stop the whole country. We need the largest investigation in history from the FBI to go after the Trump team. I know some of you out there were like, I'm just trying to catch a Gyarados or a Pikachu, you know. No, victim of Russian propaganda. That's what was going on. Holy cow, it was the worst. And now our FBI was all in, the media every day. Then this story, what happens is they focus on one little detail. Right? Oh, Trump said ballots, but there weren't ballots. And what they ignore is our FBI had intel that China was doing exactly what this country had to stop for in 2016, interfering in our election systems, and our intel agencies were covering it up.
I don't even think this is true. I think he's literally just repeating what Donald Trump and Tulsi Gabbard said uncritically without actually reviewing the underlying documentation. The underlying documentation says that China purchased and or got through public records like 200 million, which is like 2/3 of the country, by the way, voting records. But the voting records are effectively like, it's literally like your name, your address, and how you vote. But I am unaware, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I am unaware of the Chinese doing any massive PSYOP operation similar to Tenet Media or similar to the Russian social media campaigns. So, I mean, hold on. Let's just see. And by the way, hold on. I'm sure there are Chinese psychological operations bots in the American zeitgeist. However, I am mad curious if it's the same thing as Russia, basically. And I'm pretty sure, like, Russia, through Tenet Media and through trying to meet with the Trump campaign, 100% had, like, closer ties with the Trump administration than China did with the Clinton administration. What is it? Did Trump/Gabbard prove Chinese psychological operations in reference to election manipulation? The U.S. is increasingly exposed to Chinese election threats. President Trump is expected to make new claims. President Trump repeated several false claims. Trump spy chief claims Obama administration covered up the Chinese shit. Trump alleges China committed interference in 2020 election. Trump, let's check out the AI. Let's see. No, President Donald Trump and former DNI Tulsi Gabbard have not proven that China successfully executed psychological operations or rigged U.S. election outcomes. While the Trump administration declassified a trove of intelligence reports in July of 2026 alleging a massive Chinese campaign to acquire 220 million U.S. voter records, independent intelligence experts, state officials, and previous formal assessments maintain that these findings do not provide proof of altered votes, manipulated election infrastructure, or stolen elections. So, once again, the Chinese have a 2/3 chance of knowing your name, your address, and how you voted. And I'm sure there are Chinese bots that are trying to get you to convince that invading Taiwan is not that big of a deal. But they have not, at least to my knowledge, they have not proven a similar psychological operation to Tenet Media perpetuated by the Chinese, nor have they proven a similar scale of social media psychological operations compared to what the Russians did in reference to the Russo-Ukrainian war. So, Shapingro, thank you for the gifted king. Appreciate you.
Because they thought that it helped Trump. Now, does that sound like democracy? Does that sound like giving the people? And he doesn't care. Lonerbox doesn't give a shit at all. He's like, whatever, that ballot stuff, that's bullshit. That's all the bad. Any word on our intel agencies intentionally covering up foreign interference into our life? You got any word to say about the democratic nature of that? You going to condemn that?
Well, the fact that you're wrong. The U.S. intel report from 2021. Not only they reiterated that Russia had authorized the campaign to support Trump's re-election, obviously, they also mentioned that China was taking what they called low-level exploratory steps to denigrate Trump. And then they also said that Iran was launching a campaign to undercut him. That all happened in a Democrat And a Biden era U.S. intelligence report from 2021.
Yeah, that's right. So
It's
what
another
happened
thing that
was,
they do, yeah,
yes, see, clever
Typical
obfuscation
Trump,
here. So
they're hiding this. It's actually
here's what
existed in
happened.
the report since like 2021.
In the lead up of the 2020 election, right, they hid the intel from the administration because they thought that they would use that intel and say, look, China's trying to interfere to help Biden, and that would help Trump in the election. Now, they had no problem spreading the intel that Russia's trying to interfere to help Trump, and Biden using that. And so what he's saying
Har, thank you for the Patreon membership. Appreciate you, King.
is that's okay that they covered it up because after the election and our side won, well, then they admitted, and by the way, China was trying to interfere. I'm sorry, that doesn't cut the mustard. If this was the opposite, and imagine how this debate's going if Trump did what the Obama administration did. Imagine in 2020, he came out and said, okay, I concede, I lost, right? And then he says, now we're gonna write a phony baloney, we're gonna pay a foreign asset to come up with some opposition research saying that China, worked and colluded with the Biden administration. And
he did that in reference to Ukraine. Rob! He did that in reference to Ukraine, Rob. He did that in reference to Ukraine. He told the Ukrainians that they would not get aid unless they announced publicly that they were conducting a corruption investigation into his political opponent, Rob. He manipulated foreign governments into trying to take out his former his sons met with a Russian lawyer looking for dirt on the Clintons. Rob. This happened, Rob. Doobie for 10, thank you. Isn't it a little fucked that we're so fixated on this sort of indirect election manipulation when Israel and its allies openly influence our elections with hundreds of millions of dollars each year? Sure, Doobie. You and I agree. AIPAC should be registered as a foreign lobby and subject to the Foreign Agents Registration Act. But so should Tucker Carlson, so should Tim Pool, so should anybody who's simping for a Taiwanese invasion of China. Wait. Sorry, the inverse. A Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Anybody simping for a Russian invasion of Ukraine, and anyone simping for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, their fucking finances should be open and they should be investigated for FARA violations. Yes, we agree. Oh, and then also any people advocating for extreme Gulf state American interest against Israel, but also in reference to business development, they should also be opened up to FARA investigations. We agree. Doobie says, if the story was Russian-American billionaire and Putin ally gave Trump $250 million for his election, we never hear the end of it. The selective outrage is ridiculous. Well, that's because Israel is arguably an ally and Russia is arguably a rival and enemy. But if you just want me to concede that AIPAC should be registered under FARA and all foreign agents should be registered under FARA, you got me.
In order to steal the election, and we're going to get FISA warrants, and we're going to slow drip this for the next 4 years, and Fox News and Breitbart and all these places every day are going to be shouting at President Biden, who's going to be eating chocolate chip ice cream or some shit, oh, yeah, China did this, China did. He'd be like, I have never seen such authoritarianism, weaponizing our FBI to get illegal warrants based on your own opposition research. But when it's the Democrats, yeah, but at least Hillary said, I concede. That's literally the argument. Never forget what Russiagate was them taking Hillary, who had colluded, her team, which had colluded with Russia, to accuse Trump of doing the same. And so instead of investigating Hillary, who actually did get misinformation from Russians and actually did use it to influence our elections, they investigated Trump, who, what a shame, the results found that he didn't. Oh well, too late, 4 years of ruining his administration. Again, he wants to waffle back and forth between what's the rhetoric that matters to? Well, this rhetoric doesn't meet the standard of being fascist or ultranationalist, etc. And it's more about the actions that you're taking specifically. But don't look at the actions too, because the actions could be the opposite of X. I remind you, your own author says that I could be an authoritarian, populist, ultranationalist or whatever, and still not be a fascist. All of this is just selective cope by you. You haven't argued that Trump's not paleogenetic, which means that you should prefer my definition from Roger Griffin, who specifically says, here is the minimum. You must be paleogenetic, you must be populist, and you must be ultranationalist. And Trump is not two of the three.
First of all, my author just doesn't say that. That's also why, when he's exploring different European groups that he thinks have elements of fascism, he usually takes things that they have in common. So people like Le Pen, when they are obviously very populist and when they are very obsessed with the idea of national decline, and then their big focus is immigration, because obviously the outgroups is a big part of it. But then he says, well, it doesn't seem like they've shown any indication that they want to subvert elections. Or when he talks about other dictators, like say in Iran, he gives a more on the fence position, because obviously Ruhollah Khomeini was very populist, and he was obviously massively authoritarian. But when it came to his nationalism, it's a bit harder to pigeonhole it, because for Islamic nationalists, like the Ummah is the nation, like all of Islam is the nation. So that's like where he maybe has his own different kind, and also the theocracy is a slightly different thing from how he understands fascism. But that's why I'm doing it by examples. That's probably why you probably can't think of anyone who has those pillars that I mentioned, that I derived quite easily from that book, which is that they don't trust the democratic process, i.e. authoritarian, or they don't respect it, and then that they believe in some kind of national revival of a humiliated nation at the hands of an in-group and of a hostile in-group and a hostile international community, and that they're populist. I don't think there's any regime that he's spoken about that.
But that's because you defined those specific terms in specific ways. Well, populist only means this hyper-specific thing. Again, I'm reading from direct
I'm not
authors.
being hyper-specific. I'm just qualifying.
Please.
I'm just qualifying it to set it apart from I think people should vote.
I'm reading from exact authors that are seeking to identify what fascism is and what their definition of populism is. He's like, nah, I'm just qualifying with some things. Notice how when he wants to qualify and not give a real definition, he's just putting qualifiers. It's okay to look at the actions that specific countries have taken. But when I look at the actions that Mussolini specifically took, he goes, that's not important. Sometimes he'll do X, sometimes he'll do the opposite of X. So when it suits him, he says, we point to these examples and show that that's an example of populism, right? We don't really have a clear-cut definition of what populism is, but here's some examples of things that we would see. When I'm reading an actual definition, he's like, no, we should just ignore that. Same with the question of ultranationalism, or the type of nationalism that he's talking about. Let me ask you this. If I call, if you support Medicare for all, are you a communist?
No.
Okay, why not?
Shit.
Isn't that a communist policy?
I just realized we're...
No. Fuck. I'm the only person who ever learns anything. After years of being in the debate space and interacting with dozens, hundreds, thousands of political creators, I'm the only person who ever actually listens to fucking anything. Socialism is the attempt to emancipate humanity from the oppressions of capitalism. Nearly every 19th century socialist philosophy, regardless of whether or not it was Marx, was trying to free humanity from the oppressions of nature and capitalism. Marxian socialism, although Marx and Engels himself used socialism and communism interchangeably, is the decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production. Food, water, shelter are no longer commodities. And then also, the workers are in control of the economy, either through, like, what would you call that? Like unionism, or through, I forget what they call it, but there's something that Noam Chomsky is, where he advocates that, like, everybody is basically like a democratic shareholder of their business. I forget what it's called. Somebody can tell me in the chat. And then communism is the end state of humanity that results in a moneyless, stateless class of society. So if you're a communist, you want a moneyless, stateless class of society. If you're a socialist and you're a Marxian socialist, you want the decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production. If you're a socialist in general, you just want to emancipate humanity from the oppressions of nature and capitalism. If you're a social democrat, you want a robust welfare state to take care of the people who make a capitalist economy work. So universal healthcare is arguably an incremental step leftwards, but it's a social democratic policy, not a socialist or communist policy. Yeah, co-ops. Yeah, I see some people saying, there was another word that somebody said. It wasn't co-ops, but the idea is the same thing. It's like trade unionism or some shit. Worker co-ops. Yeah, I don't fucking know. Who fucking knows? It's all socialist pipe dream bullshit. Not syndicalism. That's what it was. Sorry, I'm going to Google this real quick so we can all learn something. Syndicalism definition. Syndicalism is a worker-led political and economic movement that uses labor unions to abolish capitalism in the state, replacing them with worker-managed industries. Key features include direct action, general striking, and industry-based organization. Syndicalism was the word I was looking for. Thank you, Limbo Gagino.
This is holy fuck. That is it's a policy that communists do, but that's not what a communist society or someone who's like a communist would just say that it like is enough. So no.
And so let's say I did 4 other policies that were like big social policies. Would that be enough to make me a communist?
That would make you a social democrat.
Gotcha. So it would
Thank you.
be more about my ideas behind it, my ideology, correct? So I could support those same 4 policies and actually be a communist if my ideology was to be a communist, right?
Yeah, but the difference is that communists are a lot more honest about what they seem to want when it comes to economic policy. They're dishonest about everything else, but they're honest when it comes to...
Can we agree we hate the commies? Can we both agree with that?
Yeah,
Yes,
but they are very, very honest about what they want when it comes to the economy. They'll say that they are...
One smart thing you've said today, good. Yeah. Is Trump an ideologue?
Is Trump an ideologue? Not really.
No, he's a dog chasing cars. His flexible authoritarianism and political corporatism are accidental. Which is why I seriously have said multiple times, Trump is a fascist who is too stupid to understand philosophical fascism.
Really? Like, kind of, but his ideology is, again, it's very nebulous. This is, do you want to go to the notes again? Or?
What's fascism? Is it an ideology?
I've described it as a political behavior.
So fascism is an ideology, and he just admitted to you, Trump's not really an ideologue. It's nebulous. Just like that. Well, here's the truth.
Did Griffin say that fascism is not ideologically nebulous? And I also said this in my opening statement as well.
Griffin outlined
that
specifically.
Fascism, more than any other movement, is one that has basically functioned without much of a solid party program.
I think most lefties actually say that Trump's a demagogue more than an ideologue, correct?
How is a demagogue more than an ideologue?
Ideologue, like for example, I'll appeal to our great esteemed
What's consistent
here.
with Trump respecting an election result when he loses?
Trump comes out and he's like,
thanks for hanging out, Skeptical. I appreciate you. Listen, I'm with you. I'm enduring the psychic damage because I'm a man of the people, and the people voted that we stay here and take the psychic damage.
Hey, man, we should get rid of bump stocks. Remember that happened in the first term? And his audience was like, what the fuck? What is this guy talking about? Get rid of bump stocks? So then like 3 days later, Trump's like, never mind. Now, is there anyone that voted for Trump that thinks like, ideologically, Trump's a staunch Second Amendment? They'd be like, no, he's not really an ideologue. Trump's sort of a guy that's like a delegate. He's listening to his base. He's listening to other people. He brings people in the room that disagree with each other. He likes to sit in like a big chair and be like, yeah, we're going to compromise. We're going to do this. This isn't an ideologue. He's not taking actions because he's ultra-nationalist, because he's like the state above all, or that he has this. If anything, he's taking actions because he wants to be personally liked. And this is, by the way, the narrative of the left puts all the time out there, right? Now we want to believe that Trump, he's always, with the left, he's always two things simultaneously. He's a buffoon, but an evil genius. He's this staunch ideological fascist, but fuck it, he's just picking and choosing as he goes. And you'll get around this by saying, well, but fascism more than any other ideology, it could do one thing one day and one another. Yeah, but the key part, as if he's just said, is you have to have that ideology. You could do X and then do Y, and that doesn't make you a communist, even if communists like X and Y. It is your thought process, your reasoning for it, your ideology. And Trump's reasoning isn't because he's some fascist that believes like staunchly in a palogenic state or populism or ultranationalism. Trump's reasoning for that's because he wants to be well respected. He wants to be a guy that's considered historic. He wants to be a guy who's actually doing things that are good for the people that he claims to represent. That's not fascism. And given that your own argument is you could actually meet every pillar of fascism and that doesn't make you a fascist, then the key distinction would be the ideology. And when you say he's not really an ideologue, it gives the game away.
Well, I would give the game away if I was ever conceding that the idea that just because you're not necessarily an ideologue means you can't be a fascist. I don't understand why you would put that in my mouth.
Okay, then
besides do
you mind if I promise I'll let you interrupt me next. Ready? Can you define then, if there's no minimum for what is a fascist, what is it that makes you a fascist? It would have to be the ideology, right?
There can be a minimum. It depends on whether or not you describe the form of nationalism that fascists take as being an ideology. You could say it is, but it doesn't necessarily mean that like it's like an ideologue on the spectrum of being like the least kind of ideologue, as in like you're the least likely to have a consistent program, or you're the most likely to change your opinion on things without ever justifying it to anyone. Like you're the most likely.
I forgot how to spade. Like somebody said, spades should be a game that's played more often, and I forgot how to play spades. I fucking love spades, bro. Spades is a sick game. I fucking love spades. It's very tactical. It's a very tactical game. I'm not going to ignore chat in order to play spades, though. I just thought that was funny. Real serious for 100 Argentinian. Thank you, King. If a toddler got power and said, give everyone food and houses, maybe they're not a communist, but the policy aligns with socialist communism populism. For sure, for sure. And like, I'm okay. Part of the reason why I feel like I have a coherent worldview and nobody else is paying attention is because the left-right origin of the political term left and right is within the definitions of like the people versus the monarchy. So if you're a pro-institutionalist, especially within an American context, then you're going to be a right-winger. If you're pro-people and you think that justice for the people should come at the expense of institutions, then you're going to be a more left-leaning person. So giving everybody healthcare is 100% a more left-leaning ideology, and I think that socialism and communism, as flawed and fucked up as it is, I think communism is truly the furthest left you could ever go. A moneyless, stateless, classless society where food, water, and shelter is decommodified and everyone benefits from any productive activity done by the people, that is the furthest left you could possibly go. But that's based off of a prescription of like material future that doesn't make sense to me. Like that would be like me saying that the material end of the planet, because human beings abhor freedom and they love purpose and they love organization, is a single party and single person rule of the planet. That is the only thing that makes sense, is single party, single person dictatorial rule of the planet. And then I just act like single party, single person rule of the planet is inevitable. Which weirdly enough, some dissident right-wing freaks claim that. So for me, is universal healthcare left-wing? Yes. Is it a way to socialize shit that is probably going to be favored by a substantial amount of leftists? Yes. But is it definitionally socialism or communism in a Marxian sense? And the answer is obviously not.
Person like Mussolini, the very first time that he offered a program of fascism, one of the clauses in it was a rejection of war and imperialism. He dropped it after a few months. No new wars. The same thing with Hitler, again, downplaying his anti-Semitism or constantly shifting his economic policy. Because again, with fascism, it draws its doctrine, if you want to call it that, or its semblance of an ideology or a doctrine, mostly from the cult of the leader. That's why no successful fascist regime ever has succeeded after their leader died, because of the stock that they put in their leader. And
wait, okay, do you think Trump's going to leave power?
Hold up. AK Batusai says, I love how Doobie thinks that Israel influences U.S. politics and Israel couldn't even influence the Bush administration to change one word in a speech. I disagree with both of y'all simultaneously. I can agree that Israel has a disproportionate amount of influence in Washington, D.C. politics without believing that they have like a monomaniacal dictatorial control of Washington politics. And weirdly enough, the GDF essay that we watched, I'll show it to you because I think it's actually really excellent. I know it's lefty America bad gobbledygook, but I want to share this with chat real quick. GDF, I'll actually make this point and then I'll go back to it. But GDF did a video essay where, in my opinion, they did a really good documentation of Israeli influence in American White Houses, and they use firsthand accounts from the presence of the United States and their frustrations with the nation state of Israel. And I think, weirdly enough, this video actually proves both sides wrong. it proves that Israel doesn't have a monomaniacal control of American politics, but it also proves that they punch well above their weight class for population size and economic output. So strong recommend, even if you hate the author, even if you hate the way the content's presented, even if you hate the America bad overall narration, take a look at it. Because I think they actually source the primary sources in reference to precedents quite well.
Did anything I just say not make sense there? In the sense that, yeah, there's a kind of ideology, but it's also quite nebulous, and it's a lot more to do with the cult of the leader, or the story, or the emotional appeal of the masses. That this is kind of more where fascism comes from. You acknowledge that programs are not a very fascist thing to do, right? Hitler had a 20. Hitler had a 20. Well, what do you mean in general? Like a party ideological program, like a doctrine. So Hitler had a program in like 1920 of 25 points. He ignored pretty much all of it. Mussolini's program didn't really fully form until he was 10 years into power. And some would argue as well that, I think quite convincingly, that so much of what's in that program was not exactly what he was doing.
Okay, I get it. So, yes, programs in general don't make you a fascist. I've outlined the 3 pillars of fascism. Okay. My point that I'm making, though, is if you don't have a minimum, which your author doesn't, and you don't give what the minimum would be, and you can meet all of these metrics and still not be considered a fascist, what we would use to determine would be what is your ideology. When you admit Trump's not really an ideologue, he's sort of wishy-washy, wants to think whatever he wants, now you're backtracking. Well, it's on a continuum, like he's low on the threshold, because you realize once more that you gave the game away. At the end of the day, the important thing to remember is this, right? You can't prove that he's an ultranationalism. I'm giving clear definitions. I'm giving a clear definition of populist, which he needs to prove. I'm saying that populist basically means every candidate is populist. I'm giving you a clear definition of ultranationalism, that it's like the country above all else. He gives these nebulous definitions. He himself as an individual has changed what he means from 5 years ago to fascism to what he means today. And the most important thing is, if you're sitting here and you're watching, right, and you're like, I don't know, some of this is like over my head, or it's just two bloviating fools just up there talking about whatever. Ask yourself this: could reasonable people disagree on what the definition of fascism would be? So why is it that they want to use this term? The reason is because
every MAGA person is an abomination. Dude, I just need the PEPFAR stats, man. I just need the PEPFAR stats. It really is annoying that we only have projections. I just need excess deaths caused by HIV in 2025 and 2026. That's all I need. Because if 3,000 people died from HIV and AIDS in Africa, then I'll be like, okay, turns out the Trump admin was right. PEPFAR was a fucking scam. Let's go ahead and defund all international aid programs and focus exclusively on hard power. But if a few 100,000 fucking Africans die, so the American taxpayer could save $36 per year, then I'm going to point to the Trump administration being vile pieces of shit who knowingly killed hundreds of thousands of Africans so they could save the average taxpayer $36 per year. And by the way, once again, I'm perfectly okay with transferring PEPFAR responsibilities to other nations over time so we don't kill hundreds of thousands of people. Oh my God. All right, anyways. But if you thought that Trump was going to fuck over Ukraine, and if you thought that Trump was going to fuck over Africa, and if you thought that Trump was going to fuck up geopolitics, and if you thought that Trump was going to get hundreds of thousands of people killed, and if you thought he was a fascist that tried to overthrow the regime, then maybe, even if you yourself did not want to take a pot shot at him, you might say, well, we would save hundreds of thousands of people's lives if somebody took out Trump. You know what I'm saying? I thought we did the math and it was more than $35 a year. I don't think so. How much did, USAID is more than $400 or $36 a year, but how much did PEPFAR cost annually? I think it was annual funding has grown from about $2 billion in 2004 to $5 to $6 billion in recent years. So let's do $6 billion. Calculator. Sorry, guys. I am just a little tapped on the debate. It's not that we're not going to keep watching it. We'll keep watching it until it's time. But $6 million billion, divide by, let's say 150 million Americans pay taxes every year. $40. It's $40. So sorry, you could buy a Chick-fil-A meal for yourself and for a family member that is an adult. Or you could buy a Chick-fil-A meal for yourself and you could buy 2 children's Chick-fil-A meals for the amount of money that we saved.
Because they don't really give a shit. It's not like, oh, the horrible thing is like the war in Iran and like these expansionist policies or, his anti-regulation or this. They don't want to talk about specific policies. They want a label. Lonerbox says it in his opening statement. It's important to like nip it in the bud before it gets starting. We're not concerned about end results, etc. They're using this term because they know that it fires up their base. And even in the specific community you're in, Lonerbox, we hear that the guy that's sort of the head of it has his mod say.
Okay, you said you're not buying a Chick-fil-A meal with any of that unless you're a pygmy. No, I am. I'll tell you exactly why. I'll tell you exactly what I get. I get a grilled chicken sandwich with a white buttered bun, large fries, large drink. Then I get a chocolate shake. That's like $18.05, which, by the way, is insane because a decade ago, that would have been like $11. So paying $18 for it, every time I fork over the cash, I actually truly get physically pained whenever I pay $18 for one fast food meal. It's delicious. I might even go get one today, but it physically pains me. And then I think the kids' chicken nuggets 10-piece, they're like under $10. And my kids normally like share the 10-piece or the 12-piece. And so I get them a 12-piece, they share it, and then I get them a fry and a small Sprite. And my youngest is 3 years old. He doesn't need soda. But my 8-year-old or 9-year-old, he gets a Sprite. And so I think I could probably come in under $40 for grilled chicken sandwich meal, large fry, large drink, milkshake, 12-piece chicken nugget, small fry or large fry, realistically, and then a small drink. I think I could come in under $40 for that.
Saying there are school shooter vibes. I go back to the fact that within 24 hours, you said, why shouldn't we, or when should we have taken out Hitler? Do you have anything to say for the people on your side that use the rhetoric that you're espousing to justify their violent impulses against law enforcement, against people that support Donald Trump, against the White House press correspondents' dinner, or against Trump or any of the people in the administration? Anything you'd like to say to them?
I want to give you a couple.
Yeah, sure. Political violence is bad. I think political assassinations and extrajudicial murders are not only bad, but they destabilize the country and make our country a worse place. However, I would like the people who just believe that political violence is bad is to recognize that wielding power in crazy ways that hurt and kill people, people will get angry about that, and sometimes they'll respond violently. So I don't know. If you violate the 4th, 5th, 8th, and 14th Amendments of the United States routinely while doing mass deportation operations, if you have federal agents running around the country beating the shit out of people on camera, if you have, the mass deportation operations not actually following due process of law, if you have allegedly a few 100,000 people die unnecessarily as a result of international aid program cuts, if you have thousands or tens of thousands of innocent Ukrainians die as a result of the start-stop aid that we provide Ukraine, then they might look at that tally of several 100,000 dead people, potentially millions dead according to some outfits, but they'll look at that and they'll say, holy fucking shit, if these people were dead, the world would be a better place. So, if I can acknowledge that extrajudicial violence is bad, can you admit that the way that you wield power internationally, killing hundreds of thousands or millions of people, might piss some people off? Right? We can acknowledge both simultaneously, Rob?
Couple of minutes.
Yeah, I'll probably say that given that
Q&A.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Well, given that you were in that in that stream with me, and they had this stream like on that particular day, and probably argued more convincingly than like any other liberal or leftist probably could about why you can't just say because this person resembles this ideology close enough to even put them under the same label, that's not a good reason to shoot them. Then I don't know. It seems like I actually gave quite a fair measure on that.
You
said as much as well.
It's like the footnote. Here's the message that 5 million people see, but my footnote that 100 people read, I was like, oh, and don't shoot him. But you know the impression that got from that tweet.
We're at the time to go into the Q&A. I want to say, folks, please join me in applauding our speakers. That was amazing.
It was a good show, man. It was a good show. I might let the Q&A run for the next 30 minutes just for shits and giggles, as long as I keep the audience, if you guys want to check out the Q&A. But realistically, I do appreciate Rob and Lonerr throwing elbows without losing their minds and using terms of service slurs like somebody I know. I'm talking about myself in that regard. You know, Rob can be a frustrating interlocutor, and I think I would have spurred out more, and I think I would have yelled more. In-person debates are obviously like a little bit different, but I think I legitimately could have gotten quite frustrated with his argumentation and sweeping for the Trump administration. Also, I did DM Lonerbox and say, hey, brah, I want to talk to you about the fascism debate. And he said, yeah, cool, bro. And then he was like, I don't know if I'm going to have time today. And then I said, that's okay, bro. Just let me know, bro. And that's where we're at. So I'll hit him up again in another couple of days if I don't hear from him in order to do a follow-up conversation with Lonerbox. Got $10 from Horse God. Thank you, King. Can the U.S. even properly spot all the pillars of fascism falling since we have spent many years slowly eroding our rights for promised guaranteed safety, Patriot Act, COVID, lockdown, drone strikes, etc.? Well, I don't know if you mean this with the 14 points or 14 pillars. Is it pillars of fascism or points of fascism? But I hate Gramsci. Not Gramsci. What was this guy's name? Were outlined by writer Lawrence Britt, focusing on features by blah-blah blah blah. Wasn't there an Italian writer? But I hate the 14 points. Powerful and continuing nationalism, disdain for human rights, identification. This definition is absolutely fucking useless. It is so useless. Anytime the state does anything malevolent at all, you could argue it's some degree of fascist. And yeah, Umberto Eco, right. And powerful and continuing nationalism, disdain for the recognition of human rights, identification of enemies and scapegoats, supremacy of the military, rampant sexism, controlled mass media, obsession with national security, religion and government are intertwined, corporate power is protected, labor power is suppressed, disdain for intellectuals and the arts, obsession with crime and punishment, rampant cronyism and corruption, fraudulent elections. This definition is totally fucking useless. It's the most useless definition I've ever seen in my entire life. Apparently, Eco, I thought it was Umberto Eco that came up with it. But Umberto Eco was specifically trying to describe the historical phenomena that predated Italian fascism so that people could identify these developments within their own societies before they had happened. But it's just fucking nonsense. Like, every society participates in most of these 14 points to varying degrees. And so as a result, it is so nebulous, it's absolutely fucking useless. Whereas political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism is not only self-identified by fascists to be the way that they want to seize power and advocate for the political corporative health of the nation state, but it is easily identifiable and specific so you don't mix up fascists with other breeds of authoritarians. Holy shit, I wish I could go back and fucking strangle Umberto Eco myself.
And if you want to line up in the center column on the left side, want to give a huge thank you to our sponsors, including Uncensored America, Roar, Maine First Project, Apologetics Arc, and Yonaguni International Cuisine, linked in the description box below. We are grateful they believe in fair debates. And then we are going to take a moment just to get the cameras reset.
Their interests and things like that, or to pursue deals. But I think when you go into the territory of getting someone to calculate what your trade deficit is with 100 different countries, and then using that percentage, halving it, and then imposing a tariff on it, which has nothing to do with trade deficits, and then just saying, yeah, they're charging us, so we're going to do this, then you're a lot more standoffish, and I think you're going more into the kind of like hostile nationalism or ultranationalism. I think ultranationalism is a lot more hostile to the rest of the world.
So would you say that Trump's tariff policies would be ultranationalist and not nationalist?
They're like an example of it, like of that extent, yeah.
That'd be ultra. So then how else would you protect your own domestic markets?
Well, he didn't protect domestic markets. There were lots of companies that had to close because of those tariffs, and the stock markets got absolutely royally fucked until he had to reset them. So, yeah, you can protect markets, but again, protecting markets is different from, we have a trade deficit with all the rest of the world because we're America, we're the money where people can be whatever they want to be, and they make all the money in the world, and we have all of this advantage on the planet. We're upset because we don't buy as much from Mozambique as they buy from us. That's not really like protecting your own trade and industry.
I'll just say this real quick, like funny how he said there, when it comes to definitions, maybe we should just look at examples. Yeah, like Mussolini, which is exactly what I did.
And
it was
Hitler,
like, all of these things are the opposite of Trump, and you're like,
Nah, I'm good. I'm rapping. Sorry, kings and queens. We were at 40. We were bouncing between 40 and 50 despite the power outage. The donations have been extremely generous today. I sincerely appreciate it, but nah, dude, I'm not watching the Q&A and watching a repeat of the debate for fucking 30 people. No offense. I love you guys a lot. You guys have been incredibly generous, so I'm going to thank you, but no thanks. I'm good. I'm good. Lonerbox didn't dominate as much as I thought he would. I think he kept it cool. I feel like he had decent argumentation, but I feel like if you were a right-winger who wanted to hear, what about the Democrats, what about the Democrats, what about the Democrats, oh, your definition is so nebulous, your definition is so nebulous, your definition is so nebulous, then you could walk away from that debate thinking that Rob won. I don't, but that's because I think political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism, I think I can, not only define it accurately, I think it's historically, anthropologically, psychologically, metaphorically, existentially, physically, materially, militarily accurate. So, anyways. All right, I'm going to thank the people who did donate, though. I'm sorry if I did miss your donations from the earlier stream, but I don't have those up in my fan funding segment anymore, so unfortunately I'm not going to be able to see them. But thank you for your donations earlier if you did donate earlier. But let me thank the people who donated today. Horse God, Real Serious, Doobie Doobie, Shapingro with the gifted, Larry Hutchinson with the 5, and Larry Hutchinson with the 5 gifted. Thank you, King. I'm sorry to hear that your life has been chaotic, but know that you're not alone. You are absolutely not alone. There are me, Jeb Kush, Bud123, and yourself are all bros who are trying to figure our shit out. And also Grassroots Hegemon and a bunch of other community members. We all got our shit to figure out. You are not alone. So, Arthur says, Bibi Netanyahu, the new Ayatollah has been revealed to me in this YouTube stream chat. If you make my AIPAC check come through, my life will be for Israel. True. Connor is one of the good fascists. I agree. Connor follows most of the 14 points. True. I am very sexist. Horse God says, that's your friend, Connor. True. I hope I'm not spelling Connor or Connor's name incorrect. It is C-O-N-O-R. It is C-O-N-O-R. Total Rob victory. I don't agree. I think he did well, but I don't agree that it was a total Rob victory. 14 points are from fascism, and fascism I wish I could throw in the dustbin of history. Rodney Hobbs says, I dipped in just to come back to because of bullshit. Well, fair enough. Just being right is not enough. I know. You have to argue competently, passionately, and convincingly. So you're right, Kaiser, about that. Well, because John says, I told you that you should give Connor is a Nazi versus Demon Mama and this mother trailer for the new girl hottest. I should. I'm not going to right now, but I should eventually bring up the Demon Mama debate. But you know what? Well, QC John, I already feel like I'm conceding your way already, King. I think I'm conceding your way by jumping back in the debate scene. You know what Prime Kai said? Prime Kai said, I would love to have you back in rotation, but just a heads up, Admiral Gibbs is oftentimes in rotation, and you're going to have to deal with that. And I said, as long as you're okay with me avoiding slurs, but calling him an abhuman, subhuman, degenerate orangutan R slur, as long as he's okay with that, then I think we'll get back into the Prime Kai debate scene. Also, I do have a response from Raging Tomato and Motor Grid 1 Sports, so I should be able to start debating today. Bud123 says, my portfolio is up 11%. I'm invested in the end of the world Palantir, which is massively up-to-date based. Does being ADHD and finding bullshit boring give me superpowers against propaganda? Yeah, probably. Me too. Louis Salazar says, me too. I'm trying to get my shit together. I'm looking for work. Good. Doobie says, Arthur crashing out because he tried to come at me over my rigor and ended up exposing his own lack of rigor. Shake my head. Happens to the best of us, King. Happens to the best of us. Thank you, Military Industrial Complex, for pumping my portfolio today. True. Connor, I started going to church again. Good, man. Good, Beef. Once again, you don't have to be a literalist to get you don't have to be a literalist in order to get advantage out of religious community, moral lessons, and, coffee and girls in sundresses, girls in sundresses, coffee, community, and moral lessons are advantageous to a lot of people. So you don't have to be a literalist believer for that. Jen Winkler says, ew. I don't know what in reference to. Doobie for 10 says, I wish the libs would just stop calling things fascism because they never do it correctly. Correct. One of Doobie and my moments of commiseration was when we were in the Twitch and YouTube political debate scene, and he actually just started articulating centrist fascism from a political, corporative, and flexibly authoritarian worldview. And I was like, bro, this is literally Giovanni Gentile. This is literally Keith Woods. This is literally Cultured Thug. What the fuck are you doing? And he was like, you got me. True. My best friend died. I have hole I'm trying to fill. I can't take any more loss. Understood, Beef. I'm sorry, buddy. If you need to commiserate via DMs, shoot me something. But yeah, man, fucking obviously loss will take it out of you. You'll have a hole in your heart. And so the only thing, mourn, right? Mourn your friend, grieve the loss. And what I'll tell you too is having recent experience with grief and loss, you can be like a shark, right? You can just sharks have to keep swimming in order to get oxygen through their gills. If they stop swimming, they die. And so for a while, you can keep swimming and basically just work, hang out with friends, drink, shit talk, pursue new relationships, all that kind of bullshit. And you can do that for a while. But ultimately, what I have found to be very painful, insanely painful, but also incredibly emotionally productive is just grieving. It is just grieving. Literally on a weekend, on a day off from work, on a day where you don't have responsibilities to anyone, literally just sit there and weep and think about your friend and think about the times that you had together were good and think about the missed opportunities that you could have had and think about what could have been and think about this and think about that. And effectively what'll happen, at least what happened for me, is by taking, I think it was about 5 days. I think I left on a Thursday and I came back on a Monday. For the first 2 days, I just wept, fell apart, cried, just thought about every fucked up thing I could possibly think of to mourn my relationship, both with the wife and with Melissa. And then the third, and I truly, man, I'm just sharing this, non-existence. I didn't want to kill myself. That's not what I'm saying. But existence was so painful that I was non-existence, mindless oblivion sounds preferable to the level of emotional pain that I'm in right now. But what happens is you run out of things to cry about. You run out of painful things to think about. You run out of rage. You run out of sorrow. You run out of tears. And then when you're out of rage, sorrow, and tears, you just pick yourself up. Right? And then you just pick yourself up and then you keep it moving, But you need to, I think in order to actually deal with loss, you have to take that time to grieve, or else you're just a shark swimming. And the second you stop, you're going to drown. So, yeah. Rodney says you can get used to a bunch of loss. I feel like I did. I'm not well, though. Yeah, bro. You need to fall apart. You need to fall apart. Yeah. I feel that in your heart, brother. I'm feeling it in my heart. Yeah, man. It'll fuck you up. It'll fuck you up. But that's humanity, man. That's being human. That's humanity. Like, yeah, sure. Being human is adventure and machine guns and automatic grenade launchers and world travel and strippers and alcohol and adventures with the boys and dating hot chicks and having kids and getting married and having dogs and fucking birthdays and all that bullshit. But it's also loss. It's also grief. It's also misery. And so you just kind of have to take the bad with the good. And I know that's easier said than done. It's infinitely easier to say that, particularly when you're not suffering yourself. It's really easy to say, oh yeah, you just got to take the bad with the good. It's really easy to say when you're not suffering yourself. It's harder lived. It's easier said than actually lived. Severin says, I'll take Gibbs any day over any of the Crucible people. At least he's straightforward with what he believes and is a self-admitted degenerate alcoholic, cokehead, whoremonger. I guess. You can just become broken like me. That's another option. That's another option. Gotta debate it more, true. Bud123 says, I'm so autistic that I accept rejection and wish the other person well. I don't go into jealousy and accept the other person's wishes. Good for you, man. My friends tell me rejection sucks. My rejections previously I viewed as good and helped me. Well, good for you for having a good mentality when it comes to that stuff. I have a friend, a lady friend, that I hung out with this past weekend, and we had a good time. Is Victoria single? No, she's got a boyfriend. She's got a boyfriend. But what was I thinking? My lady friend said, and I resonated with this. I don't know if any of you guys will resonate with this, but men and women have core questions. And it's kind of like at the root of who and what you want to be, right? And so she said that the core question for women is, am I cherished? Right? So am I loved? Am I lovable? That's like the core question for a lot of women. And if you don't love them enough, if they don't feel cherished, if they don't feel valued, then eventually they will destroy your relationship and maybe destroy themselves because that question is not being answered properly. And then for a lot of men, what she said the core question was, and this resonated with me, is, am I enough? And so men, I'll speak for myself, will evaluate their self-worth over, am I manly enough? Do I make enough money? Am I a good partner? Am I capable of providing for my family? Am I strong enough? Am I this enough? Am I that enough? And so our sense of definition, our core question, at least according to her, is, spinning out over that core question. And so for me, I would say that resonated with me, because rejection is effectively somebody stating, you are not enough. They're saying, you are not enough to be my partner. You are not enough to be whatever social role within this context. And that rejection can hurt, can obviously hurt. And so you gotta figure out how to struggle with that core question in a way that makes your life interesting. Real serious says, I'm a man, but I want to be cherished too. True, King. True. Yeah. Randy Chang says, you're man enough, Booby Bear, except for the Warhammer doll collection. True. Yeah. Yeah, Conserve says, I've never felt like it was a statement of not being enough. Some puzzle pieces just don't fit together. Yeah, I know. I just, Victoria and I, as puzzle pieces, we fit really well together for, I feel like, probably a decade of our relationship, of our 14-year relationship. I felt like we were a puzzle piece that fit together in a lot of ways. And then for Melissa, I felt like a very, very, very strong puzzle piece connection. But then there's a huge, it's basically attachment style. Attachment style is the thing that broke us. So I never felt it was a statement of not being enough. Oh, that's what I read. But 123 says, when a girl and I was friends who rejected me previously got a boyfriend, I was happy for her, but I was grateful for her rejecting me, though, since it snapped me out of being delusional. Yeah. You always got to look for silver linings for sure. Yeah, you can't be... Jesus hates a pussy. And sometimes you have to recognize that sometimes you just don't get what you want. You know? Sometimes you just don't get what you want. Sometimes you can pine and you can cry and you can sacrifice and you can work and you can destroy yourself for something. And sometimes you just don't get it. And that's life. Ricky says, was your ex to the left of you politically? Did you agree politically? She was to the left of me politically. She was more progressive. Weirdly enough, we did kind of beef a little bit about that. Towards the end. It wasn't a big deal in the beginning, but towards the end, she became more progressive. And obviously, like, I'm very centrist, but I can be very chuddy. And so we beefed on some progressive topics. Yeah. Randy Chang says, these evaluations are tricky, especially over time. Stay together for long enough, you're often not the same person as you were when you guys first got together. And Randy Chang, I think that's a quote that resonates with me as well, is women marry men expecting their partners will change. Men marry women expecting their partners won't change. And I would say the Victoria that I married, that I would marry her again, you know? But I'm still the same guy that she married, but she's different now. So I'm not what her ideal partner is. So, yeah. Jesus hates a pussy. God hates F slurs. Make up your mind. Attachment styles can be adjusted. My wife finally accepted that Saturday morning when I would disappear, I was usually on the lake or in the woods, and stopped getting mad at me for leaving before the sun comes up. Yeah. But I think attachment styles, at least as far as I know, and one of my friends told me that attachment styles are bunk. But apparently there's like secured, which is like less than 10% of the population. Like seriously, probably 5% of the population is secured attachment. Then there's avoidant and anxious. And I don't know what the stats are on these attachment styles, but for anxious, which I am, basically I want a strong amount of definition within a relationship. So even if a relationship is like a hookup, or even if a relationship is a tryst, or even if a relationship is a marriage, or even if it's just dating, I want to know what the relationship is, and I want to have a strong sense of definition of like where the relationship is. And I think that's rooted in anxious attachment. Avoidance, though, at least as far as I understand it, with avoidance, there's like dismissive avoidant and fearful avoidant. Effectively, when shit gets too intense, they like push away their feelings. So a dismissive avoidant, allegedly, is someone who basically they're in, I don't want to say incapable, but it's difficult for them to feel overwhelming intimacy. And so if somebody becomes overwhelmingly intimate with them emotionally, they'll push them away and shut them down and stop feeling in the relationship because it's difficult for them to be intimate because they likely had an abusive childhood. And then same thing with fearful avoidant. Weirdly enough, fearful avoidant, allegedly, based off of what I was reading, is where people oftentimes had really hot and cold relationships with their parents. And so as a result, they can't trust intimacy. So they crave intimacy. They desire intimacy. They want love. But whenever they get it, they become fearful of rejection. And so if it gets too intense, they shut down emotionally. They can't accept help or additional intimacy past what they've already observed. They basically go into like fight or flight. Like you have to stop interacting with them because they're in fight or flight. And that sucks because I truly do think Melissa is like that. And what was the other thing? Fearful avoidant, dismissive avoidant, anxious, secured. Secured is your parents loved you. Both of your parents loved you. You knew that they loved you. You don't have any problems with vagaries in relationships. You don't have to self-sabotage emotionally. You don't have to shut down and be cold. You know? You just like with a partner, you're very happy and secure and you want to be happy and secure. But if a partner leaves you, you also have a very strong sense of self-definition. And so if a partner leaves you, that doesn't affect your sense of individual emotional security. And so what was funny about that, so I was talking to my friend who doesn't really believe in attachment styles. They think it's like psychological gobbledygook. But what they said was, which I thought was really funny, is like, they said like 90% of the population is codependent, 5% of the population is secured, and 5% of the population are type B personality disorders. So like narcissistic personality disorder, Machiavellian personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, fucking sociopathy, psychopathy, BPD, all that bullshit. You know, like any diagnosable psych disorder that affects relationships. She says that's like 5% of the population. And so you got to be careful out there. You got to be careful out there to not let your anxiety or codependency dominate the way that you conduct your relationships. You have to be careful out there that your avoidance, if you're an avoidant, that you shut down emotionally whenever you get intimate. And then you have to be careful that if you're a type B, where you have like borderline or antisocial or Machiavellian or narcissistic or whatever, you have to make sure that you're not out there like actively fucking people up because you're a type B personality disorder. Yeah. Yep. Louis Salazar says, that explains my behavior. I go swimming a lot, and it's probably because of my childhood. Louis Salazar, you're probably out there fucking breaking hearts and fucking people up because of your attachment disorder. So, as much as like therapy is not for everyone, I would strongly recommend, if you feel yourself like getting intimate where you're actually kind of falling for a woman, and you're saying to yourself, like, I could actually be with this chick long term. I actually like her a lot. And then you have like an impulse of like fear and anxiety, and then you reject her and run away. Especially if you want a long-term relationship. If you actually do crave intimacy, then you should probably go talk to someone about that. You're not going to be able to fix it overnight. You're still going to experience the fear and the anxiety, but with some coaching, you might be able to overcome it. So, but that depends on whether or not you want to, right? If you want to be a fuckboy into your 60s and just fucking have a series of shallow relationships until you have a heart attack and die alone inside your apartment, that's an option. You can do that. You're just going to break a lot of hearts along the way. But if you actually want a relationship, I strongly recommend going and talking to somebody about attachment disorders and be like, hey, this fucking schizophrenic douchebag streamer that I listen to sometimes who's talking to me about psychological bullshit, and I want to see if I'm fucked up in this way. Let's talk about my childhood. Real serious as take up drinking, it solves everything. It really doesn't help me. It really doesn't help me, man. It really doesn't help me. I have fun while I'm drinking. The next day, I feel like shit. Dude, on Friday, I had 5 beers and a shot. And Saturday, I was fucking done. I was too awake to go to sleep, and I felt like too much shit to be productive. You know? So you gotta be careful with that shit. At least for me. If you're like an alcoholic and you can drink every day and you don't feel anything, awesome. That will kill you eventually, obviously, but we all have our crutches. So, yeah, be careful with that. But for me, booze is just, it's not my drug. It's not my drug. Rodney Hop says, I fear violence. X threw a coffee at my head for imagined reasons, among other things. Was she Hispanic? Hispanic domestic abuse. Lol. Anyways. I parasocially love the 30 people who are still hanging out with me while I'm just yapping. Thank you so much for your generosity today. I do appreciate it. Thank you for your continued viewership, even while a substantial amount of liberal streamers are live. I do appreciate it. Go watch your other favorite streamers. I am going to go eat, and then I'm going to force myself to work on some pre-recorded content. So I parasocially love you guys. Thank you so much for your viewership. Thank you so much for your donations. I appreciate you guys, and I hope you guys have a